What's up, everyone, and welcome into episode number 483, where it is time to preview week 2 of college football, where we got Michigan versus Oklahoma, Michigan State versus Boston College. And in order to talk about all of that, I have a special guest join me, and that is Liam O'Malley. How are you doing, man?
I'm not doing bad. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good. I can't believe we're already at week 2. Obviously, Michigan State, Michigan both 1-0 at this point. Michigan State obviously had a really good first half. Unfortunately, did not have a very good offensive second half. And then with Michigan, they got a college game day this week. So exciting things to talk about.
For sure. For sure. Let's get into it. I'm excited.
Yeah, no. So let's start out with obviously college game day is headed down to Norman, Oklahoma, which if you look at the matchups, it kind of makes sense. You have two teams in the top like 20. There wasn't really any other matchups that were really that great per se. So what are your thoughts kind of headed into this game? Because you have two teams that have high expectations, but also two coaches that are kind of in big situations.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. Well, I'm not going to be able to see much of it because it's at the I didn't realize they were both starting right at 7:30, but I'm sure it'll be a good game. I'll be checking. I'm sure Spartan Stadium will be giving us score updates throughout the night, but it'll be a good test for both of them. I mean, they Oklahoma played Illinois State, Michigan played New Mexico. Neither of those teams are really going to push those two powers to the limit. So it'll be cool to see how they match up so early in the year.
Yeah, and I truly think it's a really big game for both of them, especially for Oklahoma, not only because obviously Brent Venables is their head coach, but they're coming off of a 6-7 season in the SEC. Like things aren't going to get any easier for Oklahoma from this game on. Like they're going to be playing your Alabamas, your Auburns, your Ole Misses. And then you also have the homecoming for Sharon Moore going back to Oklahoma as well. So if you really think about it, this is probably for both of these teams, one of the biggest early games that they have this season because it can really point to the success that either of these teams might have this year.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you want to see first big game early in the year. You want to see how players are going to rise to the occasion, especially a guy like Bryce Underwood, a true freshman quarterback. It'll be, yeah, it'll be a big game for sure. We'll find out a lot more about Michigan and Oklahoma too, I guess, than we did in the first week.
Yeah, and you talk about Bryce Underwood, and we got an interesting QB matchup. We got Bryce Underwood, obviously, freshman quarterback. I think you could maybe argue that he was one of the better freshman quarterbacks that may start week 1 versus Washington State transfer John Mater, which, if you know anything about Washington State, they like to throw the ball quite a bit. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. So, how would you feel about kind of the quarterback matchup? I know you talked a little bit about Bryce Underwood obviously being a freshman going into Norman, Oklahoma at night, biggest opportunity he's ever had. Do you think he's going to rise to occasion? Because he looked pretty decent, pretty good against New Mexico, but this is not your New Mexico. This is not the big house. This is Norman, Oklahoma in the prime time.
Um, I I don't know. We'll see how Underwood does. I mean, I didn't see the whole game on Saturday night, but from what I did see, it looked like he made a couple great throws. The one little out of the shadow of their own goalpost, perfect touch ball. But like you said, and Venables has always been a defensive guy from Clemson, correct? I believe
Yeah.
he was the DC there, so he's always. I'm sure he'll have some elaborate scheme to try to get Underwood off his game early because, like we're saying, it'll only be his second game. He was playing the Detroit Catholic Centrals of the world only 9 months ago, so if they can get him off his game early, you never know where it could go from there with a freshman QB. It could completely derail Michigan's entire offense.
Yeah, and obviously confidence is a big thing, making sure that he doesn't make any mistakes. But then you also have to look on Oklahoma's side of things and just how physical this game is going to be. Because if you really think about the SEC as a whole, it's really physical at the offensive line, defensive line, front seven. Like it's going to be a test for them as well. Like it's going to be about who's maybe the more physical team, but then you have the matchup between Michigan's run game versus Oklahoma's defense. Like we know how good they were with Justice Hayes, Jordan Marshall. If Oklahoma can shut down the run game, do you think that's really the biggest difference in this game is going to be that defensive line, that front seven versus Michigan's run game? Or do you think because of a Bryce Underwood, maybe it's not going to be that much of a difference than maybe it has been in the past?
No, I think it'll definitely probably be come down to that because you just got to think of it from Michigan's perspective. I mean, Sharon Moore, there's no way he wants to put Bryce into a spot where he's got to throw on 3rd and long to bail out the Wolverines all night. You're going to want Haynes to get going. I mean, he averaged just under 10 yards a carry last week. We'll see. I mean, Oklahoma's returning starters on defense. You'll see how they can limit. I'm sure they'd love to limit them to 2 yards, 1 yard on 1st and 2nd down. Then they can heat up Underwood, bring some pressure, and really speed up his clock in the pocket.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's really the biggest difference of this game is you really can't allow Michigan to really have those big runs because I think that was really the biggest difference in the game between New Mexico and Michigan was those big runs by Justice Haynes. Jordan Marshall didn't really do a whole ton, but if Oklahoma can prevent those big runs, those 50, 60-yard touchdowns, then I really think that's going to put a lot of pressure on a Michigan team, again, under Bryce Underwood. But then you look at guys like Marlon Klein, Donovan McCulley. Like, those are two guys that were his main targets. But the only issue is last week, they had drops. Like, drops cannot happen in this game at all if Michigan wants to win. And they're going to really have to have those guys step up, in my opinion.
For sure. For sure. And then I think on the flip side of it, you gotta wonder what Michigan's gonna try to do to prevent Oklahoma's pass game from going all over the place. Because, like you said, is it Mater or Mateer? I don't know, whichever.
Mateer, I was just going to
Mateer.
say, I probably completely botched his name
Yeah, I
knowing
don't
me.
know. I we'll go with Mateer, I guess. But he went for almost 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, did throw 1 pick, but I mean that's explosive, and that's something that I mean Michigan traditionally recently has done well right now against good quarterbacks like the Ohio States of the world and stuff like that. But again, it's a new season. We don't know how they're going to fare this year. I think it'll be interesting to see. Mateer spread it around to 3 receivers for Oklahoma had 88 or more yards, and one of those is actually Deion Burks from I believe Belleville, right? Belleville High School initially, and then went to
Yeah, I
Purdue
think so.
and now off at Oklahoma. So yeah, he spread it around. They only averaged 3.2 yards a carry on the ground against Illinois State. So that's advantage Michigan off the page right there. But we'll see what Michigan does defensively.
Yeah, it's kind of that interesting connection between Michigan and Oklahoma because I believe there is a Ferris State player that transferred from Ferris State to Oklahoma for a year, Connor Neer,
Yeah,
being from
yeah.
Michigan, and then obviously ended up transferring back to
Back to Ferris.
Ferris State. So there has to be a little bit of that connection between Michigan and Oklahoma, which I don't know exactly where that came from. But yeah, I definitely agree, especially the running attack for Oklahoma. They really were led by a freshman, which is really unique in college football per se. You don't really see a lot of freshmen really leading an offense, but you also saw a little bit of John Mateer being able to use his legs. So maybe that will help a little bit. But if you really look at what Michigan's weaknesses was in the first game. One was dropping passes, like you can't do that. But two, New Mexico was able to attack that secondary when they had time. The real question of that is when they had time. There were sometimes they didn't have time, sometimes it was a clean practice. I think that's going to be another huge test for this Oklahoma offensive line is making sure that John is protected. But when he has time, they were able to attack the secondary, which is unusual because it really seems like this secondary has been pretty good. And I feel like if John has time to attack the secondary, I think this is going to be maybe an offense that can put up quite a few points on this Michigan defense. And they do that, it's going to be a real question of can Michigan catch up?
Yep. Yep, for sure.
So yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting game. I'm going to be definitely at least keeping an eye on it. I don't know if I'll be watching it for the whole thing, but definitely keeping track of the score. But what's your prediction for this game? Obviously, college game day, everyone's going to be eyes on it for the most part. It's going to be live TV. Like, who do you think wins? Do you think it's a close game? The over under, I believe, is like 5.5 is the spread. Do you think Oklahoma covers it? Do you think Michigan wins? Where are you at with that? With your background, I think I kind of know where you're going.
Um, Trying to be unbiased. The spread, I think it's right around there. I think it's one. I don't honestly see Michigan winning. I think that's a tough environment to go into for a young team. Team that I don't know. I don't know. I'll say Oklahoma wins and covers, not by a ton or anything, but they'll win by 7 to 10 or something.
Do you think this game for Oklahoma is bigger than it is for Michigan? Because I think it currently is for Oklahoma. I think it's much bigger for Brent Venables and Oklahoma than it is for Michigan at this point.
Yeah, in Venable's case, for sure. I mean, he's hasn't done nearly what's expected of an Oklahoma head football coach, so it hadn't carried the recent success as well at all. So yeah, I guess it is bigger for Oklahoma, but just being in state, it always feels like it's going to be a big game for Michigan.
Yeah.
Sure that
And what's crazy is Venerables went 6-7 on the first year, 10-3, then 6-7 again. So it really truly feels like he's kind of, I don't want to say on the hot seat,
No, I think
but
that's fair, honestly. I think yeah, I think
yeah.
that would be fair to say.
Yeah, he needs this win more than Sharon Moore, but I'm sure Michigan fans would be happy with a win. But I don't know, I don't know exactly the way it's going to go. But I think Oklahoma will end up winning this game. I think we'll see Bryce Underwood make a mistake or two. I don't think there's not very many quarterbacks, especially freshmen that start that don't make a ton of
Yeah,
mistakes. I think he might make his first or second mistake that might end up costing Michigan. But hey, Brent Venables basically said that he kind of see um, Bryce Underwood being special, kind of see him like being a Trevor Lawrence type quarterback. He's seen a lot of quarterbacks, defensive coordinator at Clemson. So definitely going to be an interesting matchup there. But let's get to the other matchup. We got another night game to talk about, basically going on at the same time. But in East Lansing, we got Michigan State, Boston College, a rematch from the red bandana game last year. Hopefully, it's not going to be a tsunami this time around because it truly was one last year. Glad I wasn't there. I know there's a few people there, so I don't. Probably you weren't there, but I do
nah,
not want a tsunami whatsoever in East Lansing on Saturday night.
nah. You that makes two of us. That's for sure. That's for sure.
It's one of those things that if you have it like once in a while, it's kind of fun, but at the same time, it's like I rather have like a nice football fall afternoon than anything else.
Yeah. Spartan Stadium gets enough weird weather in late November, so we can save it for then, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But what are your thoughts going into this game? Obviously, it's a big matchup for both of these teams early on. I kind of want to say for MSU's side of things, or you can even say for Boston College side of things, it's kind of a must win for both of these teams. I hate kind of saying that because it's only game number 2 on the year. But for MSU side of things, if you want to keep the momentum going from all the hype in the offseason, from last year, like that we can say was a disappointment for Michigan State. You want to keep the momentum going. I think Michigan State has to win this game. And if they don't, I think they have to pick up a game or two later on the season that's more of a 50-50 game than probably this will be.
For sure. I think it's definitely a must win for Michigan State. Again, it is hard to say that in week 2, but you look at I guess just the last 10 years since they made the playoff, there hasn't been too many times where there's sustained excitement. Like 2016 right off the playoff, sure, and then all of a sudden you go 3-9. So then going into the next year, it's like, well, maybe they can right the ship. They go 10-3, whatever. Decent year in 19 and the flash in the pan year in 21. Obviously all those, but since 21 there's been no reason really to be excited except for last year's 3-0 start. So to lose a game this early in the home game, revenge game, a game you should have won last year. It feels like you had them on the ropes at their place. You said, like you said, all the crazy weather. Chiles was even more inexperienced. It a game you let get away. It feels like a game sandwiched between Western Michigan and Youngstown State at home revenge game. You can't lose that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's a matchup that obviously there's familiarity with each other because of last year. But earlier this week, Jonathan Smith gave a press conference and gave some interesting quotes because I think one thing about Jonathan Smith that can't be argued about is I think Jonathan Smith is a good coach. Now, is he the right coach for Michigan State? We could probably argue that. Kind of depends on how this year goes, kind of the fan you are. I think the one thing for fans that they've been looking for Jonathan Smith is to show some emotion, show something. Like, don't just be plain Jane, like, hey, this is the way it is. And I think he showed a little bit of emotion earlier this week, basically saying, hey, we remember storming the field last year. Like, there's going to be guys that are on this team that remembers that, and it's going to stick with them a little bit. Hearing Jonathan Smith say that, showing a little bit more of emotion, or showing the fact that, like, hey, like, that stuck with me and that stuck with these players. Do you think that gives a little bit more hope to MSU that, like, they're going to come in prepared and they're going to come in a little bit of, let's just say, pissed off of what happened last year relatively to maybe what fans thought they might happen? Because I think fans knew that these players would think that they're big game opportunity, but like it truly seems like this is different than any other game we've seen, at least Jonathan Smith talk about.
Yeah, no, I think anytime you get a result where you have so much, again, last year early in the we were 3-0 at that point. Michigan State was 3-0 at that point, and you lose that heartbreaker, and you go on and from that 3-0 start, obviously you end the year 2-7. So it's like you can almost pinpoint the turnaround in the season in that late game loss to those Eagles. So I think Coach Smith embracing the revenge game, the players, as you said, embracing it. I think it does give more. It gives, I guess, it gives a fan a sense of like, okay, they're going to be ready to go. Like it's not Michigan State's going to come in and try to coast through this game, which you can argue that should never happen, but it's
Yeah,
just the nature of the beast. Um, and so yeah, I think it does. That is encouraging, and I think it should motivate. They should be motivated. They lost this a game. They should win. And again, like this is a huge game for the future of the program, for the fan base, for the players, just the way the program's viewed. I mean, if you can win this, assume you win next week, move 3-0, heading out to Southern California, feels a lot different than being 2-1 with wins over Western and Youngstown.
yeah, absolutely. No, I completely agree with you on that. And you also have a Boston College team that is maybe not the greatest running the ball because we saw what they did against Fordham last week. They had less than 100 yards, I think, on 38 attempts, which obviously Michigan State's probably strength again. It truly seems like stopping the run is going to be Michigan State's strength again this year. At least they were really good against Western Michigan for the most part. But I think that's going to be a real sticking point to this game is continuing to stop the run because you do have Turbo Richard back this year for them. He did have 10 carries, 46 yards against MSU last year. So not maybe the best game in the world, but like a decent game, like
Yeah,
4.6 yards per carry.
yeah,
He's
it's not
he's
bad.
kind of like the main back this year. He wasn't the main back last year, but I think another big opponent of this game is the second half offense for Michigan State because we've talked about this, and I think every MSU fan has talked about this. You mentioned the fact that like you can't hold anything back in this game. And it truly seems like to me, and maybe to some fans, that MSU kind of held back a little bit against Western Michigan, or maybe got a little bit conservative. Do you agree with that? Or do you think it was more about the players making the plays and maybe Aiden Chiles not performing as well, maybe not making the plays? Like, are you concerned about the second half offense? Because we saw last year, second half wasn't good, and in game one, it wasn't good either.
No, let's put it this way. I hope that the coaching staff got a little vanilla and that is not the approach for the remaining 11 games. I think, yeah, maybe it was a little bit of execution, but it was just really stagnant. First half looked great. Like, honestly, you're hitting Omari Kelly early. Second half, I think it's a little bit of both. Probably more though that the coaching staff doesn't want to show Boston College anything, show any Big Ten opponent anything, and having the ex player perspective, I understand that and I can see why. And I can also see why, as just a true fan, it pisses some people off that Michigan State didn't want to score other than safety in the second half.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say it was extremely frustrating, especially because of what happened last year with the offense not being able to really score very much at all in the second half. And I thought MSU, for the first half, it was almost kind of like bringing back a little bit of like the MSU of like mid 2010s. Like it was like, where has this offense been our whole life? Like it feels like it's been like 5, 6, 7 years outside of obviously the Kenneth Walker years where we
Yeah,
saw an offensive line be able to get a push, where we saw a holes that were basically truck size holes that running backs weren't getting hit within like 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. Like running backs weren't getting hit behind the line of scrimmage. I believe Matt Sheehan in his podcast basically said that there was like 3 or 4 times that they were hit behind the line of scrimmage against Western Michigan. I think last
yep,
year in the first game it was like 19 times.
yep.
So like it truly seems like it's a little bit different, but there's still that concern with Michigan State offensively, in my opinion.
No, yeah, for sure. And again, it's in no way disrespectful to the MAC or anything. It's just a lot, especially in the transfer portal era. It's a lot different um, size and competition on the lines, especially. So we'll see how it translates, and we'll see if the O line can replicate that performance. And if they can, obviously, it's great for the Spartans. And if not, it's gonna depend a lot on number two.
Yeah, it's really going to be on his arm on guys like Nick Marsh had a pretty good game. Amari Kelly, I think, really showed quite a bit in that Western game. It's really going to depend on those guys. And like Jack Belling, Michael Masunis, it's going to depend on the playmakers around them to make the play. But then you also have the defensive side of the ball. And I think that's really the most interesting matchup here because I think MSU is going to be able to score on this Boston College defense. I know who they played, wasn't a great opponent at all, only put up 10 points. I'm one of those people that if you look at the stats for this game, I don't think the stats tell the whole story because when you're going up against a team like Fordham, like you score 66 points, but I would be shocked if that get anywhere close to what happens in this game. But you have an offense in Boston College. Like I said, Turbo Richard is back, but you have Alabama transfer quarterback and Dylan Longigan coming in. He was pretty good in the first game. Obviously, like I said, stats, in my opinion, doesn't matter a whole ton. But earlier today, he did not practice, but it seems like Bill O'Brien said he's going to be back tomorrow. I don't know if
Yeah,
that's exactly going to happen. So that's going to have to be an eye to keep on for. But outside of that, like there's one guy that I'm definitely keeping an eye out for, and he's a wide receiver, Lewis Bond. He had 6 catches, 102, one touchdown last year, and against Fordham, he had 11 catches, 138. He's going to be a guy that is really truly going to test this defense for Michigan State. Like we saw in week one, it seems like this defense is going to be better. But my major concern with this defense is we saw a few plays given up through the secondary, and he was able to really hurt MSU last year. I think he's going to be a guy to really kind of keep an eye on for this game, especially if they end up getting Dylan back and a couple of these others wide receivers. I think this is going to be a true test for Michigan State secondary, which is pretty new, looked pretty decent against Western, but still gave up a couple of big plays that I think they're going to have to try to avoid giving up in this game.
Yeah, no, for sure. Very new defensive secondary for state. And one thing that I think Coach Smith mentioned yesterday is he's hoping that Nikkei Martinez will be available this week, but obviously nothing confirmed. Probably one of those things we won't find out until Saturday at 7 o'clock. But either way, you have to, yeah, as you said, I think he's had back to back 600 plus yard seasons. So you want to, obviously, Boston College and Lonergan are going to be looking to him first and trying to get him the ball. He's been there, he's done that, and now he's in like his 5th year of school. Hypothetically, this could be his best year. So you got to prioritize that, make sure he can't get anything going early. And if you do, you got to be able to rally and tackle. If you give up the catch, you can't have broken tackles. You can't have a 15-yard catch turn into a 50-yard one because of bad tackling. So I think Martinez back would help a lot. Just a veteran that's played a lot of football on the back end that can, you would assume, could talk through the defense with guys like Malcolm Bell and Armorian Smith and Joshua Eaton. So as a state person, you're hoping that Martinez is playing. That could hopefully make a big impact. And if not, you gotta the rest of the secondary's got to step up.
Yeah, and Coach Bill O'Brien actually did say that he thinks MSU is going to be one of the best defenses that they play all
Yeah.
year, which I think is obviously high praise for Michigan State, especially for kind of the defense we're accustomed to the last couple of years. Is hasn't been necessarily the
No.
greatest, especially through the secondary. But it's about getting to the quarterback. It's about getting pressure. I feel like that's another thing that MSU is going to have to get better at than they did against Western Michigan. But they also have to be better protecting Aidan Chiles, because I think that
Yeah.
was really the biggest thing for MSU in pass coverage was the offense line. They did not at times, especially in the second half, give Aidan Chiles enough time. Now we've seen Aidan Chiles make some incredible plays, but we can't have Aidan Chiles running for his life back there again, even if the run game is good. So I think it's going to be about which defensive line and which offensive line takes a step up. And I think the better lines for either the team, like if Michigan State has a better offensive line, if they have a better defensive line, I think they're going to win. I think it's going to be the more physical team. I think it's going to be really a grudge match and the offensive line. And I think it's going to be a big game to see how far Michigan State has come offensively, especially when it comes to the offensive line, because I think that's the real big test for Michigan State is what's the offensive line and defensive line going to look like.
Yep. No, for sure. I think they addressed the O line heavily in the portal this year, and quite frankly, State has struggled on the O line for a while. Even the K9 year, I know you brought it up earlier. It was better that year, but it's also easier to block for a guy like that. Not to mention, defenses had to be wary of Naylor, Reed, and Coleman to be torched. So the O line has struggled for forever, and you just hope that these guys they brought in can build off of week one and move forward. And then guys they kept like Stan Ramo and Brosuis and guys like that.
Yeah, I definitely think there's going to be a lot less rotation than maybe what we saw against Western Michigan, because this Boston College team, they had 3 sacks against Fordham, did not give up many yards on the ground as well. Again, kind of the opponent, but it's going to be another key factor in this game is to see which offensive lineman performs well, which one doesn't, and if MSU has a long day throwing the ball and running the ball, it's going to be probably a pretty similar experience to what we've seen in the past, which unfortunately is not necessarily the greatest end result for Michigan State. But speaking of end results for Michigan State, where are you at with this game? Obviously, we've talked about the importance of this game for both teams. Who do you think wins? I think it's 3.5 right now
Yep,
is the
I
over
believe
under.
3.5 is the line on I think every book. So this one I think again trying not to be bought. Well, I guess it just sneaks. I think Michigan State wins this game simply because I think the I think everyone recognizes they have to. I think the crowd will recognize they have to be a big factor. The players, I mean, everyone, it's easy to talk about how young Chiles still is and his development and all that. This is his second to last year of eligibility, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, they burned his red shirt at Oregon State, which
Yeah,
in hindsight was I
questionable.
I wonder if Smith is happy with himself for that in hindsight. Yeah, but I want like you got to wonder if that was one of those things just to keep him out of the portal. But I don't know because that seems so dumb now. He's younger than me. I'm 20 years old, and Chiles is younger than me, and he's got this next 11 games and 12 next year, and he's gone. So
Yeah.
I think he'll recognize. All right, these are the best receivers I'll probably have in my time here, top to bottom. Marsh, McCray, Kelly, Velling, Masunis. Like I think the offense will come out, make a statement, and I think the defense just needs to play well enough. Like you said, the last few years, State's defense, especially in the secondary, has been horrific. But second year under Rossi, second year under Smith, you just gotta hope that the defense can play well enough. And I think State will win this thing. I'll get a little bit I'll say like 34-23.
Okay. I like that. That would be really nice. A little bit more of a comfort win. In your opinion, what do you have to see in the first quarter or the first half to feel comfortable going into the second half, knowing that either MSU can win or they have a chance to come back if it's that situation? Like, what are some key things that you have to see from MSU in this game to feel like we have a chance?
This isn't a really insightful answer, but I think they've got to have at least 2 touchdowns, 13 points on the board, 2 touchdowns or a touchdown and 2 field goals. I think you gotta show. I actually heard on I think Sheehan's podcast today that they haven't scored. I actually don't know if it was today's episode, but Smith and Chiles have not scored 30 points in a game other than FCS opponents. Which is that correct? Because what
That
did
that that seems correct because I don't think MSU
what about
last year averaged
Maryland?
over like 20, maybe Maryland, but like average wise, they haven't averaged
Yeah,
25 points in so long. So I
yeah.
could see that being accurate.
Yeah, no. So I think you gotta have 13, 14 points on the board. You gotta have because then at that point you would have to have your defense playing horrible to be out of the game.
Yeah.
You'd have to so you get 13, 14, you're in the game at halftime, and then it's what can last week we saw the vanilla second half adjustment and just run out the game with Frazier and Tullis. What do you do from there once you get in, say, a tie game or a 3-point game, 1-score game? What do you do when you have to go out and win the game and you're not playing an inferior MAC roster? I think, yeah, I think I'm ready for Childs to take the step. I think there's obviously no question if he has the talent to do it, and like we said, he's surrounded by good receivers, better O line than last year. I think you got to see a competent offense that can stay ahead of the chains, not put themselves back, not take holdings and bad penalties, and an offense that can move the ball at a decent rate.
Yeah. I think we need an Aiden Chiles moment in this game. Like we've seen moments in games like the Boston College, we've seen moments in this game, but we've never seen a moment in a big game. Maybe the Maryland game, but
Yeah,
like in a lot of these games that we win, it's comfortable wins for the most part. Or
yep,
maybe there's the obviously Maryland game with the Nick Marsh game, obviously like that. But we truly, I think, need an Aiden Childs moment in this game to say like, hey, like Aiden Childs is different this year. I think that's the biggest question mark is Aiden Childs, is he different? Is he the same? I think he's grown. Obviously, I think the first game definitely showed that. And I think we're going to need that Aiden Childs moment in this game because there's a little bit of concern when it comes to the kicking game. Like you saw last week, Ryan Eckley trying to kick a field goal.
yep.
Love Ryan
Shouldn't
Eckley, but
happen. Nope,
shouldn't ever happen. So
nope.
hopefully one of the kickers are back. Let's say we got Sislo in this game again. how comfortable are you in a close game with Sislo? Like, are you only comfortable in this game if MSU's up by like 2 scores if we have our third string kicker?
Um, Sadly, I've dealt with kicking game issues on a personal level a little bit in the last year, but you can't have the game come down to Sislo. How far do you know the number on how far Eckley's attempt was from? Because
I think it was 45, 45, 46. It did
so
not look good. I'm
no,
sorry.
it didn't look good, and you can't blame him either. I mean, he's
No.
probably his first 3 years here was taking reps holding
Yeah.
as a punter. So you if neither Otmit Basic or Connington are back, I think you can't let it come down to a field goal. You let it come down to a field goal, you're putting yourself in a bad spot.
Yeah. I think we're going to see a much more aggressive Michigan State in the red zone in their side of the field if you don't have Ahmed Basic or Connington.
Yep. No, yeah, you gotta almost just employ the Dan Campbell. We gotta 4th and 4. I might not want to go for this, but a 38-yard field goal is not a guarantee. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's all right. Aidan, go make a play.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I do end up agreeing with you. I do think MSU does get the win. I think it's going to probably be like a 7 to 10 point win. I think it's going to be one of those games where it's going to be uncomfortable for a lot of the game, but it's almost going to be like to the point where you don't feel like you're going to lose, but like it's one of those situations where you kind of feel like you can lose. Like it's
Yeah.
one of those games where it's like it's too close where you're like, okay, like this is too uncomfortable for me, but at the same time, it feels like a game you won't lose.
No, yeah, for sure. Like kind of like yeah, I don't know,
I was
Purdue
just
or
going to say
something.
several wins for Michigan State in the last couple of years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but
Like
no,
Florida
awesome.
Atlantic, Florida Atlantic.
Florida, yeah, Florida Atlantic, the 16 to 10 game. That was a fantastic game.
Yeah,
Not really.
yeah,
But yeah, no, I really appreciate it, man. Really hope you had a ton of fun. I definitely did. I know it's the first time you've ever joined, so hopefully we'll get you back on. But yeah, going to be two interesting games, going to be two really fun games to watch. And yeah, I really appreciate you talking a little bit about Michigan, Michigan State, and we'll hopefully talk about more in the future.
yeah. We'll see. I appreciate you having me on. It was a blast. So good to talk some in-state football, and we'll see if we sound smart or if we sound stupid on Saturday, I guess.
Yeah, I was just going to say I'm one of those things where sometimes I sound smart, sometimes I don't sound as smart. So we'll
Yeah,
see when that time comes.
for sure. We'll see.
Awesome. Well, yeah, no, like I said, thank you again for joining. Really appreciate it. And yeah, that's a wrap to episode number 483. Thank you again to Liam for joining and tune in to the next episode.